great. Thank you all. And again, I wanted to welcome Jen Harris and Erin Roth. They're both from the Stories of Our Schools, and I'm really excited about this presentation because I've seen some of the slides, and what they're doing at Eastern is amazing. So you're in for a real treat. So thank you all for joining us, and thanks, Jen and Erin. Oh, you're on mute.
I feel like I use Zoom every day and I still can't get this mute button. So we're really excited to be here. Thank you all for having us. Erin is going to share our slide deck. So take it away, Erin.
Will do. All righty.
Okay, can everyone see that? It says 100 years of Eastern High School.
Yeah, it looks great.
Okay. So my name is Jen Harris. I'm the executive director and founder of the Story of Our Schools. And with me tonight is Erin. And Erin, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. My name is Erin Roth, and I am the development director at the Story of Our Schools.
Okay, so next slide, Erin.
Mhm.
So quickly, what we are going to do tonight is talk a little bit about the story of our school mission, who our school partners have been, what the program looked like at Eastern High School when we ran it there about a year ago, what the Eastern school story is at a very high level, and then a little bit about how you can learn more about the Eastern story and how you can learn a little bit more about us at the end. Okay, next slide, Erin. Okay, so the Story of Our Schools was established in 2015. We are a DC-based 501c3 nonprofit, and we empower students to research the history of their school and the surrounding neighborhood. And then we take their findings and we help build a permanent museum quality exhibit in their school lobby, or a main space in the school, but it's usually the lobby. So the photographs to the right here, you can see our Oyster Adams students doing hands-on research at the Sumner Archives, and below them was their final exhibit that we installed in 2021. Next slide, Erin. So since 2015, we've partnered with 10 DC schools, and in order, they are Capitol Hill Montessori at Logan, Marie Reed Elementary, Payne Elementary, Oyster Adams Bilingual School, Elliott Hine Middle School, John Burroughs, Eastern High School, Bruce Monroe at Parkview, H.D. Woodson, and next school year, we're partnering with Garrison Elementary in Ward 2. Okay, so in 2022, Eastern High School and the Capitol Hill Community Foundation sought out a partnership with Story of Our Schools to create an exhibit that honored their school's centennial anniversary on East Capitol Street. So in the summer, my team went out and we searched local archives for materials to fuel the exhibit. But more importantly, we connected with Eastern alumni and area residents to capture the voices within the school's walls over time. Our participating students were led by Eastern's media specialist, Ellen Dodsworth, and they learned about the history that we collected over that summer.
Okay, so a little bit about what it looks like when we start working with students to research their school history. For Eastern, each of our school projects is a little bit different. For Eastern, the goal for students was not only to learn about their school history and have all of those good historic materials and resources at hand, but also was to create a mini documentary film that focused on a theme they were interested in the most from Eastern's history. And to do this, there were guest speakers that we had come and talk with students. The executive director of the Charles Sumner School Museum and Archives, Kimberly Springle, came. Rodney Red Grant from Don't Shoot Guns, Shoot Cameras, another local DC nonprofit, came to talk to students about teaching them how to make that mini documentary and giving them tips and advice. And then students also got to go on a field trip to the National Museum of African American History and Culture. Okay, and we did try, this is the fun part where we are gonna try and play a video from Zoom. So hopefully this works and hopefully it's not too loud on your end.
event has a history here at Eastern and has always been a pride point for the school over the years. Since the 1900s, they had concert bands, orchestras, and marching bands, and Eastern dancers and cheerleaders has also joined them. And I'd like to share and preserve what they accomplished over the years.
Being an Eastern band member means a lot because I've been here a long time. It really has molded me as a person.
It means you have to be very disciplined. You can't be a slacker or be halfway in it. And you can't bring other people down. You just got to be a part of it and stick with it and put in the hours.
Teamwork. I mean, ultimately, that's what it's all about. And just learning how to be the best version of themselves.
Okay, so that was Alexia's mini documentary, one of the students who we worked with, and the documentaries are playing in part of the exhibit. You can see them in there's a digital piece in the exhibit in the school lobby. All right, I thought that was gonna happen. There we go. All right. And another part of our Eastern partnership, which is a part of all of our school partnerships, is to form an exhibit review committee. And this is made up of invested school community members that the school helps us choose and recruit, and then we coordinate everyone. And the goal for this committee is for folks to review all of the information from the draft exhibit before it is fabricated and installed. So they read all of the script for each of the plaques, look at all of the images, and just make sure that everything is accurate to the best of their knowledge, appropriate for their school community, and really creating an exhibit that everyone is proud of. And for the Eastern's exhibit review committee, there were 12 people who participated and gave great feedback. And you can see one of the quotes from someone who was on the committee here. And these are just some pictures from the reveal event. After we fabricate and install an exhibit in partnership with a school, we always have a big party. And maybe some of you were able to make it. I'm not sure. This was in March of 2023. So you can get some sort of overview pictures of the exhibit in the two top pictures, and then the bottom four are from the reveal event itself. The students who participated in gathering the research were docents to lead people through, as well as National Honor Society students at Eastern. And you can see the Lady Gems performed, as did the marching band. And there were student speeches, as well as a few other speeches as well. It was a really fun time. And it was at the same time as their centennial. So there was also an Alumni Hall of Fame induction that took place right after our exhibit reveal.
Okay, so I'm going to take over now, and this is the very brief or very high level overview, I should say, of the history. At the end of our presentation, they will be, we'll share ways that you can learn more about the Eastern story, but for purpose of time, this is a very high level. So to start us off, the story actually begins in 1890 when the Capitol Hill High School opened in the Peabody building off of Stanton Park with 170 white students. So of course, schools were segregated at this time. And because they had such a small student body, they only took up the 3rd and 4th floor of the Peabody building. So 2 years later, enrollment doubled, and the school actually moved into a new building on 7th and C Street and changed its name to Eastern High School. So the top 2 photos here on to the right, those are of the Peabody times, and the bottom 3 are of the 7th and C Street times. And I love that one of the girls in the gym. Okay. So in 1923, 1,100 students moved into their new building, which is on 17th and East Capitol Street. You can see to the right, the 2 little black and white photographs are of the students actually parading from their 7th C Street location down East Capitol into their new building. And then in 1930, roughly 3,300 students were now enrolled in Eastern, so it just kept growing. But in 1940, we saw that the enrollment declined. And so Eastern High School was in the building, but also Eastern Elementary moved into the building. And then in 1952, Elliott Junior High moved in, creating an Eastern Junior Senior High School with only 1,400 students. And then in 1954, of course, Bowling versus Sharp integrated DC Public Schools, and Eastern, which was still a white school at the time, was now integrated. Oh, Erin, you're muted.
Sorry. So we see here in these sort of pivotal moments in history where our school histories really become a microcosm for what the rest of the country is experiencing at the same time. So this is for schools that were white schools and then integrated. This is a pattern that we see when we work with any school in DC who went through the integration process. And it was not easy, like the stories we hear from around the country. The pictures here are from a really interesting Washington Post article that showed how the white students protested integration and collected actually from multiple schools to protest integration at that time. And then moving into the 60s, by just a few short years after Bowling versus Sharp and Brown v. Board of Ed, the Eastern student body had completely shifted from being an all-white school to a school serving all Black students. And in 1960, actually, this is in our exhibit, and you'll get a little more details about how to learn more about this at the end as well. One of the alums of Eastern, Franklin McCain, was one of the Greensboro Four, well known for becoming a civil rights activist and the protest at the Woolworth's Diner in Greensboro. But in the 60s, Eastern got its first Black principal, Madison Tignor, and had some amazing visitors. Robert Kennedy visited the school, and there's some quotes from Honor Jefferson, who graduated from Eastern and then went on to lead other DCPS high schools about her experiences there. And again, the pattern of our Eastern school history really reflecting the history of the rest of the country as the civil rights movement grew throughout the 60s and 70s. Students began to speak out about dissatisfaction that they were experiencing at Eastern High School and actually formed an official group called the Modern Strivers and petitioned and were successful in their petition for more coursework that reflected the Black experience and Black culture. And they called this the Freedom School.
Okay, so in the 1970s, Eastern offered strong coursework and their sports teams and clubs were among the best in the city. In the 80s and 90s, with the onset of crack cocaine epidemic, crime and violence rose in all US cities. 1992, DC high schools installed metal detectors. Students were no longer allowed to leave for lunch, security guards were hired, and the entrance gates to the schools were closed, so students and staff had to use side entrances that were more protected. So even with all of this that was happening outside of the school, many students saw Eastern as their second home, and the school offered this positive, safe space for students to safely express their creativity, and a lot of these students received college scholarships. And I love this slide because it's just so vibrant and it really shows the culture of the school during these years. The photograph on the left here of the audience, those are students watching Stevie Wonder perform in their auditorium. You can see literary magazines were published, football, the choir, marching band. These were just beautiful outlets where students went to be the best versions of themselves, and they went on to compete nationally, and the choir went on to compete worldwide. They were just really amazing. Okay, so in 2009, Eastern closes for a renovation, and it opens a year later under new leadership and students wearing uniforms. IB and health science programs began, and the feeder patterns changed, and the school now saw an influx of Spanish-speaking students. In 2020, of course, COVID-19 shut the school's doors, and students were learning virtually at home and not in person. In 2021, Eastern students created classroom projects bringing attention to issues of human rights, such as LGBTQ inclusion, systematic racism, white supremacy, and police brutality. Okay, and so today, Eastern students carry on the traditions of the past. With over 100 years of history, Eastern High School has been and will always be a reflection of the community that it serves, and you all are a part of this history.
All right, so we are really, really excited to announce here, and we just made it public very recently that we have an online exhibit and for showcasing the Eastern story. And Jen is going to put a link in your chat, and we'd love for you to go and check it out and let us know what you think. This is our way of translating the feeling you get from being in the exhibit as best as we can to a digital experience, so you can roll through some really big photos and quotes, and then at the end there's also a way to see what the exhibit actually looks like, although we would say it's much better to view in person. So if you would like to do that, please send an email to Jen, and she'll help you schedule with the school so you can take a look and visit it. And we just always want to give a big shout out to everyone who helped make both the student program and this exhibit possible. This is a picture of the acknowledgements plaque that is in the exhibit, and this highlights both the folks that donated financial support to the exhibit, as well as everyone who donated in kind and helped get students the stories and resources that they needed to learn about their school history. And we wanted to give a shout out for learning a little bit more about us at the end. We have a great way to come and join us. It is not exactly like being in one of our schools because it's a party, but it is our annual gala coming up, and we would love for you all to join us. If you are available, you can Jen will also put the link to that in the chat. You can join us in person, or you can support from home, of course. But we would love to connect with more of you in the Capitol Hill neighborhood. The majority of the schools that we've worked with have been on the Hill thus far. So we really would like to have your feedback and would like to have you more involved if you're interested. That is it. And do we have a question slide? I can't remember.
Nope, I think that's it.
So.
That's fine.
Okay.
Does anyone have any questions? This has been really great. Thank you so much for presenting. And actually, I do have a question myself. Is that, and I don't know the correct wording, and I should. Some people on in the group who are on CHRS, I'm on the board. We should know this, but didn't Easter become recognized as a historic place, the Registrar of Historic Places? So I don't know if you know anything about that. I know CHRS had something to do with it. I know I see that if anybody's on from CHRS, if they know anything more about that, or you do, Jen, or Erin?
Yeah, I remember when we were doing a lot of the research, that initial research in the summertime, that we were working with your team and just sharing information. So what they were finding, what we were finding, we were sharing a lot of photographs. And they ended up getting on the list, I think just a couple months after the exhibit was installed.
Yeah, it
was pretty
in the
short time
summer,
after.
the summer of 2023, I believe.
I think
I
so.
mean, at the latest, it was the fall, but yeah, it was not long after the exhibit reveal.
Yeah, but it was cool because we were working at the same time. Oh, back in November. Okay.
Yeah. Does anyone have any questions? Or feel free to just take your computer off mute and ask. Oh, and Dean, you have a question. Go ahead.
Yeah, my question is probably a little trivial, but I was volunteering for the mayor, and one of my co-volunteers turned out to be an alum from maybe 30, 40 years ago from Eastern High. And he told me that there had been a 50-meter Olympic pool in the basement, and they didn't use it anymore and just filled it with some kind of trash. Do you have any idea whether that's true or whether it's just a rumor?
Huh.
Wow, a pool. We did go, get a tour of the athletic facilities in the basement.
It might have, I didn't see one there now. There might have been one there. That's the first time I heard of it. I know Woodson has one.
Yeah.
That's a great question.
There was a pool a school that had a pool and I don't know if it was Dunbar. I can't remember.
Yeah,
I remember
Dunbar has
seeing
one.
pictures. I'm sorry. Was that you, Joanna? I can't hear you very well. Or Jean?
Okay.
Oh, did you have, actually you have your hand up anyway, Jean. Joanna, go ahead.
Yes, okay. Yes, I believe that when the school was being in design and development process, there was discussion of having a pool, but that was voted down. I don't remember the reasons. The thing that struck me was that there was a firing range in the basement, which of course now is not functioning as the firing range. I think storage. So.
Questions or comments?
It's Elizabeth. I just wanted to mention that you're correct that there is a nomination. I'm trying to think Joanna, help me with it. What's the language? Because you worked on the project.
Yes. Well, Beth Purcell and myself, we've worked on proposing the nomination to Historic Register. I don't remember the dates. I don't know if Beth is here today, but it was approved both, I believe, both for the DC and the National Register at this point. So yes, it's historic. It's going to be preserved and it's recognized for its value, both as a building and as a part of the history of the community.
And I happen to be the webmaster for CHRS. I'm right now adding a link to the post about this event that points to the information on the that nomination. So if anybody's interested or curious, you could just go back to the post that took you to this presentation and you'll see that post there.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Anne, you had a comment?
Sure. Hi there. So I put in the chat that my older son was part of the Oyster Adams one, but I neglected to mention that my younger son was at Murray Reed. And so he wasn't part of the process, but he got to experience walking into school every day, learning a little bit about the history of the school. And so I've been a big fan of Story of Our Schools for a long time. I have a couple of questions. Feel free to answer or not answer any of them. There's the gala. But how do you fund these exhibits? And then how do you choose which schools you're going to work with? You mentioned a lot are right around Capitol Hill. I have some theories like word of mouth. People, see an exhibit and they're like, I want to bring this to my school. But I'm just wondering how you balance requests for partnership with choosing which schools to work with. And then maybe my last question is, what do you do or suggest to do with the materials that are collected during the research process that don't actually belong in a repository? They might be, a teacher's personal papers or that sort of thing. What do you do with those?
Cool. Well, I'll take that last question first, I think. I think that's the easiest one. So when we do our community outreach, we find that most people have stories to tell. So that's just oral history. So when you're talking about collecting stuff, so yes, we have a recording of that usually just lives on a hard drive at Story of Our Schools. But if somebody has photographs, we take them, we digitize them, and then we give them back. We never, or I won't say never, rarely have stuff left over, right? Like original stuff. And if we do, we can talk to the community member and say, do you want to donate this to Sumner Archives? Because that's where DCPS, their archives is. I think that's happened once or twice. Usually we just return the thing. So we don't really have, Eastern was the first exhibit that actually had a artifact case that had artifacts, but the artifacts we used to fuel it were in the school already, right? So they weren't coming from anybody else's home or personal collection. Does that answer that question? Yeah. Erin, anything to add on that?
No, that's good.
And then your other question about how we pick schools. So in the beginning, yes, word of mouth, right? We piloted the project at CHML. Principal loved it. Principal was very good friends with Katie Lundgren at Marie Reed. He told her about us, and that's how we went to Marie Reed. But then we realized we needed something a little bit more official when people really started gaining interest. So we have an application process. So it starts in January. When it goes live, we usually send a note out on our listserv. And then if people who have expressed interest like throughout the year, I keep a list of them. I make sure that they see the application. We collect them. We usually give like 2 months to write the application, something like that. It's very short. We know schools are strapped for time, but it's just so we know, who your school community is. Is this the right time for the project? Do they have the bandwidth to, because this isn't just a project we come in and do it. It won't work if Story of Our Schools just comes in and researches about your school. We have to have that community piece, that involvement. We also partner with a teacher from these schools, right? So if they don't have a teacher, they can lead the students. We don't really have a project. So we just try to see who has that best balance. Especially with modernization renovations, right? Like that can either really help or really hurt depending on the timing, right? So, and we've been pretty successful, I think, with our application. More and more schools are getting interested, and it's hard. I mean, there are some schools that just have phenomenal stories, and the timing this year, especially, wouldn't you say, Erin? Like,
yes.
We saw more applications than we ever had, and it was really hard to make the decision. And we let our board of directors weigh in as well, right? Because they know what is good for our growth and what our bandwidth is. We're very small. Erin and I are the only 2 full-time employees. We work with another woman named Mary Beth Washington. She's our community outreach director and education director. She's part-time right now, but so all these things go into consideration. Erin, what else am I forgetting about applications?
I don't think anything. It's been really exciting, I think, to sort of hone in on the application process, because we do now, in the past couple of years, have schools reach out that we wouldn't have known about or were interested. And like Jen said, we throw that net really wide. If we hear that you might have asked about Story of Our Schools like 5 years ago, you're going to be on our list and you're going to get a link to the application. And sometimes principals are like, why did I receive this? And we say, because someone at some point maybe said they might be interested. If you're not, no harm, no foul, don't just ignore it. But if you are happy to answer questions. But yeah, the school, our school partner next year, Garrison Elementary, wasn't I can't say a school that we were engaged with because we're so busy in the schools that we're currently working with, but it wasn't a school on our radar for whatever that's worth. So it's just kind of fun to see who has heard about us through the application process, and then get to talk to them regardless of whether they do feel like it's the right time. We've also had schools reach out that are interested in future but not quite yet. Oh, and how do we pay for everything? Do you want me to take that one?
Erin's the director of development. Director of development. Go ahead, Erin.
Sure. And I'm coming to Story of Our Schools from being on the board for a few years before that, and I didn't have a history in development. The reason why I wanted to do this is because I love Story of Our Schools. So I can ask for money for something that I love doing and that I think, quite frankly, needs to be done. So, and isn't being done otherwise. And so we, like most nonprofits, raise money from individual donors, like at our gala, from corporate sponsors, and from grants. Those are, our primary buckets. And we've been able to increase our the grants that we are being awarded over the past couple of years. So that's great. And are still looking for more always. So feel free if anyone would like to send me new grant opportunities. Actually, my mom and dad are there right now, and shout out to my dad who works at Anacostia Watershed Society and sent me a grant I hadn't heard of that I applied for this year. So fingers crossed, but feel free to send them our way.
Go ahead, Joanna.
Yes, you mentioned that in the process of working with the school, the students get involved, they could help or create the exhibitions. Can you tell us a little bit more about it? I imagine it's how does it work with elementary school students? I can imagine high school students being more active. Do they go out and actually interview their grandmas about the school? Anything you share?
Go ahead, Erin. I only caught about half of that, so go ahead.
Yeah, you broke up a little bit. Was your question about, do you want to try again, or?
Yes, how the students in the school are involved in the process of creating the exhibition, creating and doing the interviews. I'd love to hear a little more about it, because I assume there are individual stories. Oh, my grandma went to Eastern High, and now I'm here. Something like that. So any stories to share?
Yeah. So we have a curriculum that we tailor for each school. Before we start the student program, we go and dig up a bunch of archives and documents, everything we can find at Sumner or DC History Center, online through Library of Congress, or the MLK Library, everything that the three of us can possibly find, and then tailor a curriculum for that school that's about 12 lessons that leads them from soup to nuts of doing the research, interpreting it, and then visualizing that into an exhibit. And of course, there's guest speakers and field trips in there. There's walking tours of their neighborhood, with different landmarks. There's how to conduct an oral history interview, how to be a good interviewee and really hone those skills over the course of their project. And yeah, the oral histories are definitely my favorite part, the students hearing from people in their community. And I know it's not exactly what you asked, but it's just incredibly fulfilling always to see students surrounded by people who support their school, you know, in some way or another, who understand their school, who understand their community, and are there to talk to them about it. And I think it feels to them, you know, very like, of course, these people are here supporting our school, but they wouldn't, you know, they wouldn't necessarily be there otherwise providing their stories. So that is my favorite part.
To piggyback on what Erin said, those oral histories really give the exhibit their authentic voice. And to your point of like, oh, my grandmother went here, my aunt went here, you know, that's the snowball that we need. You know, again, because Erin and I, this isn't an exhibit that we're just researching for. The archival research only takes you so far. It's those connections, and especially in the oral histories, that's like the best way to get the information out. But you really need to do that process. I think, or I actually don't think an exhibit is done until we really get our hands on that part of the process, right? Because that's the voice that really makes it. And with all our projects, I mean, we try to make them run in about a year or 2 years, whatever the partnership plans for. But if it takes a little more time, it takes a little more time. You know, that's one thing I love about Story of Our Schools. As long as everyone's on the same page, our timeline can be flexible so we can get something we really want.
And then, Jen, how do you showcase those oral histories?
So what we do now, because we are small and we don't have a ton of IT muscle, what we do is we take quotes from them, right? Because again, our exhibits are physical. You go into the space. I know a lot of modern exhibits, you can push a button, you can hear it. But for what our purpose is, what we think is the best way is to take a quote. So after students lead an interview, you know, I'll read it or I'll listen to it, I'll transcribe it, I'll pull the parts that I think really help the story along. And then in that exhibit review committee process, we allow the people to look at that quote one more time, because the way we talk is very different than the way we would write, right? And so they get the opportunity to see that quote again, clean it up if they want, but then we just put it in the exhibit that way. I also think too, you know, when it comes to like push button, you hear like the student ask the question and the interviewee respond. We're just not that polished yet to make that seamless. Like that recording goes on for an hour. You know, it's really just capturing a conversation. So that's how we do it. We take quotes.
Right. And then I was going to ask also, when you were talking about the schools that you work with, how many schools do you generally work with at the same time? Because it sounded like there was so much interest.
Yes, that is a great question and something we're always trying to push. But again, because we are so small, we really, if we bite off too much, then we don't feel like we can pay attention to our individual schools. So we really try to do 2 schools at one time. We find with high schools, and we learned this with Eastern. Eastern was a very fast project. It probably was, the whole thing ran in less than a year. And after that project was over, Erin and I decided that we really needed to have 2 years for our high school projects, just because the community, that alumni community, is so thick and so rich, right? We just needed more time. Our elementary school projects were running about a year each, but we actually decided that they should probably run 2 years. So we try to do 2 at a time. Sometimes there's like a small project that comes up, and maybe that's a 3rd school that's thrown in there. We would love to do more. We just need more funding.
Right. Yeah. I think that's all the questions I have. Do other people have questions? This has been really interesting. I can't tell. Oh no, that's my this has been really interesting. I thank you so much for sharing with us. I really need to stop by that exhibit because it just looks really cool. And it's just up the street. So yeah.
Yep.
But
just go during school times.
Thank you so much. And
yeah, thank you all. It was fun being here.
Yeah, everybody have a great rest of the day and evening, and we'll talk again. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, everybody.